There is a moment, and if you've ever truly been desperate, you know exactly the moment I'm talking about, where you stop pretending, where you strip away all the excuses, all the comfortable lies you've been telling yourself, and you look at your life with the cold, brutal clarity of someone who has nothing left to protect. And in that moment, you don't feel motivation. You don't feel inspired. You feel something far more dangerous than inspiration. You feel hungry, not for food, not for applause, for a way out, for a door, for anything solid enough to grab onto in the middle of a life that has started to feel like quicksand. And that hunger, that raw, unfiltered, unashamed hunger, is where every real transformation in human history has begun. Not in boardrooms, not in graduation ceremonies. In the quiet desperation of someone who decided, finally, that survival was no longer enough. Today, we are going to walk through one of the most psychologically complex, financially transformative, and morally loaded decisions a person can make in modern America. We are going to follow, from the first desperate thought to the last sleepless night, what it actually means to join the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, ICE. And we are going to do it without propaganda, without ideology, without the comfortable distance of politics. We are going to do it the way it actually happens. In the body, in the bank account, in the conscience, in the mirror at the end of a shift when you look at yourself and ask the question that no salary can answer for you. Stay with me, because this story doesn't just belong to federal agents. It belongs to anyone who has ever wanted power badly enough to pay the price for it, and then had to live with what the price actually turned out to be. Let's go back to the beginning. Not the application, not the academy. The real beginning. You are broke. Or close enough to it that the difference doesn't matter. Maybe you're not sleeping on a street corner, but you are sleeping badly. Because the math doesn't work. Because you've run the numbers in your head so many times that the calculations have started to feel like a kind of slow drowning. Rent, car payment, student loans that were supposed to buy you a future and bought you debt instead. Groceries, insurance, the invisible $1,000 disasters that appear without warning every few months to remind you that you are one crisis away from the edge. And the worst part, the part that never makes it into the motivational speeches, is that you're not even at the bottom. You look around and you see people who have less, and you feel guilty for your desperation. But guilt doesn't pay rent. And comparison doesn't fill the gap between who you are and who you need to become. There is a specific kind of pain that comes from being close enough to stability to smell it, but too far away to touch it. You see other people living the life that feels like it should have been yours. The house, the security, the confidence that comes from knowing that your foundation is solid. And every morning you wake up and nothing has changed. That pain sharpens just a little bit more. And then, one day, something cuts through the noise. Federal law enforcement, immigration and customs enforcement, a career with a service weapon, a gold badge, a federal pension, and a paycheck signed by the United States government. Authority, structure, meaning, security, everything your current life is missing, wrapped up in one offer that suddenly sounds less like a job and more like a lifeline. You don't tell anyone right away. You sit with it. You look it up at 2 a.m. You read the salary tables. You do the math again. But this time, the math works. This time, the numbers are on your side. And something wakes up inside you that had gone very quiet in the years of stagnation. Something that says, this is the door. Get through it. You didn't decide to join ICE because you love immigration policy. Don't romanticize it. You decided because the federal government was offering you a contract, and that contract said, prove yourself, survive the process, and we will give you financial security that most Americans will spend their entire lives working toward and never reach. We will give you structure when your life has none. We will give you authority when the world has made you feel invisible. We will give you a role inside the machinery of the most powerful government on earth. That is not a small offer. That is a life-changing offer. And the hunger that had been keeping you up at night just found something to feed on. But the government, to its credit, does not make it easy. The first thing ICE does is try to break you before you ever touch a badge. The application process is a machine designed specifically to filter out everyone who is desperate without being exceptional. Everyone who wants the reward without being willing to survive the process. You will fill out forms of a depth and granularity that will force you to examine your entire existence. Every address you've lived in for the past decade, every employer, every foreign contact, every debt, every relationship that ended badly, every moment in your past that you quietly hoped no one would ever look at too closely. And then the federal investigators will look at all of it. They will call the people who know you. They will pull records you forgot existed. They will reconstruct the timeline of your life with a precision that is, frankly, unnerving. Because the government is not just evaluating your qualifications, it is evaluating your character, your stability, your loyalty, your vulnerability, specifically, your vulnerability to corruption, to coercion, to the 1,000 different ways that power can be turned against the institution that grants it. And then comes the polygraph. I want you to understand what the polygraph actually is, because it is unlike anything you have experienced before. You sit in a chair, attached to sensors that monitor your chest, your fingers, your breathing, your cardiovascular response. A trained federal examiner looks at you without warmth and asks you questions with the casual precision of a surgeon. And the questions are not gentle. They reach into corners of your past that you had quietly sealed shut. They ask about the things you did when you thought no one was watching, the experiments, the mistakes, the moments that are technically legal, but not exactly something you'd want to read out loud in a federal office. The polygraph doesn't care how composed you are. It doesn't respond to charisma. It reads what your nervous system does in the fraction of a second between the question and your answer. And that gap, that tiny, involuntary biological response, is where your real story lives. The deepest lesson of the polygraph is this. There is the version of yourself you present to the world, carefully curated, strategically assembled, socially optimized. And then there is the version that lives in your nervous system, the one that carries every unresolved thing you've ever done. The one that fires when the questions get uncomfortable. The polygraph is designed to find the distance between those two versions of you. And if that distance is too large, the process ends there. So you prepare, not just physically, psychologically. You confront the things in your past that need confronting. You get your body into the kind of condition that signals discipline and commitment. You show up to every evaluation with the quiet intensity of someone who has already decided that this door will open one way or another. And then, months into a process that has already changed you in ways you can't fully articulate, the letter arrives. The conditional offer, the first official signal from the United States federal government that you are worth investing in. You read it twice, maybe 3 times. And something settles in your chest that had been restless for years. They send you to Georgia. Glencoe, Georgia. The Federal Law Enforcement Training Centers, FLETC, where the next phase of your transformation begins under conditions that will test every assumption you have ever made about yourself. You arrive as a civilian. You will not leave as one. FLETC is months of total immersion. There is no weekend release valve. There is no scrolling through social media at the end of a hard day to decompress with the familiar noise of your previous life. There is only the training, the cohort, the curriculum, the daily relentless demand that you perform at a level that proves you deserve what is waiting for you on the other side. The tactical shooting training is nothing like the range. You are not standing in a lane, earmuffs on, taking careful aim at a stationary target. You are drawing under pressure. You are acquiring targets in conditions designed to simulate the chaos of the real world. Limited light, limited time, elevated heart rate, the body flooded with adrenaline that makes your hands shake if your training hasn't outpaced your fear. You run drills until the mechanics become reflex, until the draw is no longer a decision, it is a response, until your body knows what to do before your conscious mind has finished processing the situation. You learn defensive driving with the kind of intensity that would be exhilarating if the context weren't so serious. High-speed pursuit techniques, evasive maneuvers, the physics of what happens at the intersection of velocity and consequence. You come to understand that the vehicle is not just a vehicle. It is a tactical environment, a tool, a decision point with a weight limit measured in human lives. But the part of FLETC that most people outside the process underestimate is the law. Because a federal agent who doesn't understand the legal architecture of their authority is not a trained professional. They are a liability walking around with a weapon. You will spend hundreds of hours in classrooms studying immigration law, customs regulations, constitutional constraints, case law, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the precise legal definitions that determine whether an arrest is lawful or a violation, the difference between probable cause and reasonable suspicion, the boundaries of consent, of search, of seizure, the procedural frameworks that transform raw authority into legitimate enforcement. Because here is the thing about power that nobody warns you about when you're still in the hunger phase. Power without precision destroys the person wielding it. The agent who acts on instinct without legal foundation doesn't just lose the case. They lose their career, their freedom, and sometimes something they can never recover. Precision is not bureaucratic caution. Precision is what separates authority from chaos. And then, gradually, something changes that you can see. You look different. You carry yourself differently. The civilian posture, the slightly collapsed, blend into the crowd, take up less space posture of someone who has spent years being anonymous, starts to disappear. The uniform goes on. The holster settles onto your hip. And that weight, I want you to feel this. The specific physical weight of a loaded service weapon sitting at your side is unlike any sensation you have experienced before. It is gravity with consequence. It is the physical manifestation of authority. It changes how you walk, how you stand, how you enter a room, how people respond to you before you have said a single word. The gold badge appears on your chest. You look in the mirror, and the person looking back is not the one who was sitting in a parking lot doing math that didn't work. That person is gone. In their place is something new, something with a role, with a mandate, with the full institutional authority of the United States federal government behind every decision they make. It is one of the most powerful feelings a human being can experience. And it is also, if you are not careful, the beginning of the most dangerous seduction you will ever face. You graduate, you receive your credentials, you begin your career, and then, finally, the paychecks start arriving. Let me be specific, because this is where abstraction becomes reality, and where the hunger that drove you here finally gets fed. As a federal law enforcement officer within ICE, you qualify for LEAP, Law Enforcement Availability Pay, a 25% premium added automatically to your base salary in exchange for your availability beyond the standard work schedule. At the GS-12 level within HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, the elite investigative division of ICE, focused on transnational crime, money laundering, human trafficking networks, cybercrime and narcotics, your total compensation with locality adjustments and LEAP can place you comfortably into 6 figures. In cities with high locality pay, significantly higher. But the paycheck alone doesn't tell the whole story of what you've actually secured. The government vehicle in your driveway, maintained by the agency, fueled by the agency. A physical symbol, visible every single morning, that your life has structure and institutional backing. The health insurance, Comprehensive federal coverage for you and your family. A benefit that millions of Americans pay thousands of dollars a year to approximate and never quite match. The Thrift Savings Plan, the federal equivalent of a 401k, with government matching contributions that compound over a career into a retirement foundation most private sector employees will spend decades trying to build and never fully achieve. And then the pension, the federal employees' retirement system, after 20 or more years of service, a guaranteed monthly income for the rest of your life. Not a market-dependent account that rises and falls with the anxiety of global economics. A fixed, guaranteed, inflation-adjusted income stream that the federal government is legally obligated to pay you until you die. In an era where financial security has become increasingly rare, increasingly fragile, increasingly the privilege of the few, this is something extraordinary. You sit in your kitchen on a Tuesday morning. The house is yours. The car in the driveway is yours. The calendar on the wall is organized around a schedule that gives your life shape and purpose. You are wearing the kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need to perform itself for anyone. The kind that comes from knowing, not hoping, not wishing, but knowing that your foundation is solid. That the person who used to do desperate math in a parking lot at midnight is genuinely, structurally, institutionally safe now. For a moment, a real, full, earned moment, you allow yourself to feel it. You made it. And then the job takes you somewhere that no salary table prepared you for. It happens on an ordinary morning. The kind of morning that doesn't announce itself as significant. You are part of an operation. A legitimate, legally authorized, procedurally correct operation. The paperwork is in order. The warrant exists. The target is identified. Everything is by the book. You are in HSI. You work complex cases. Transnational investigations that take years to build and seconds to execute. You have spent months, sometimes longer, assembling intelligence, following financial trails that wind through shell companies across multiple countries, mapping networks of human movement and criminal organization that most people don't even know exist. The work is meticulous. It is forensic. It is, in many ways, more similar to the work of a detective or an analyst than the image most people have of immigration enforcement. And one day, the case breaks open. You are there when the arrest happens. You are there when a network that has been moving human beings across borders, not as workers, not as dreamers, but as product, is dismantled. You see the evidence. You read the case file with the full knowledge of what the people you arrested did to the people they trafficked. And you understand, in your body, in a way that no classroom ever communicated, why this work matters. Why the authority you carry is not just a financial arrangement. Why the badge on your chest is a genuine instrument of justice. That feeling is real. Don't let anyone take it from you. But the job is not always that clean, because within the same agency, enforcing the same law, with the same badge, there are also the other cases, the ones that don't resolve cleanly, the ones that leave a residue that doesn't wash off in the shower. You will come to understand that the immigration system you're enforcing was designed not by the people whose lives it governs, but by legislators working within political pressures that have nothing to do with the specific human reality of the specific human being standing in front of you on the specific morning when their world ends. The system cannot always distinguish. It processes volume. It applies law at scale. And you, the human being, the agent, the person who once had nothing and now has everything, you are the final filter. The last point in the chain where a living conscience can intervene between a case number and a face. And the faces will come for you. They will come in your sleep, eventually. The person who looked at you not with hatred, but with a kind of recognition. The recognition of someone who understands, maybe better than you'd like to admit, that the only real difference between the two of you was which side of a geographic line you were born on. The person who was doing exactly what you did, searching for money, searching for stability, searching for a way out of a life that had stopped making sense. and found themselves on the wrong side of the authority you now represent. This is the weight. Not the physical danger, not the bureaucratic frustration, not even the long hours and the difficult scenes. The weight is the moral complexity of being a human instrument of a system that is simultaneously necessary and imperfect. That does genuine good and genuine harm, sometimes on the same day, sometimes with the same hand. There is a question in moral philosophy that has never been satisfactorily answered, and I don't expect to answer it here. It is called the problem of dirty hands. The idea that certain roles, certain positions of institutional authority, require the person who holds them to cause genuine harm in service of preventing what the system judges to be a greater harm. The soldier, the executioner, the agent who executes a lawful order for a person who, by any honest human measurement, is not a threat to anyone. There is no clean solution to this problem. It cannot be resolved with a better policy, or a higher pay grade, or a more sophisticated legal framework. It lives in the permanent gap between the law as written and the world as it actually exists, and it will find you, in this career, at the moments you least expect. In the quiet after an operation, in the silence of your car on the way home, in the 3 in the morning stillness when the question comes back and brings everything with it. What separates the agent who carries this weight with integrity across a full career, who remains, in the deepest sense, a full human being, from the one who either breaks or goes numb, is the willingness to keep asking the question. To never let the procedure become a substitute for conscience. To never use the badge as a permission slip, to stop thinking about what the badge actually means. The system will tempt you toward numbness. The volume of the work will tempt you toward numbness. The institutional culture, in any large enforcement agency, will sometimes reward the agent who asks fewer questions and processes more cases. Bureaucratic efficiency and moral clarity are not always the same direction. But you are not a machine. And the moment you start performing the job as though you are something essential, something that cannot be recovered by any retirement package, begins to leave you. The ones who make it through with themselves intact are the ones who understood early that the power they carry is not a destination. It is a daily responsibility. That every operation has a face attached to it. That every file has a life inside it. And that the choice to treat it that way, to bring genuine human attention to the exercise of genuine institutional authority, is the only form of integrity that actually survives a career in power. So here, at the end of this, is the question I want you to sit with. Not rush through. Not answer quickly so you can get back to the comfortable story you had before you pressed play on this video. You hang up the holster. You sit in the quiet of the house, your federal salary made possible. The notification on your phone confirms the direct deposit. The number that represents everything you fought for, everything you sacrificed, everything you endured to get to this side of the line. The stability, the authority, the security that your younger, desperate self could only dream about. And you ask yourself, who did I protect today? Was the authority I exercised today genuinely in service of justice, of real safety, of real protection for people who needed protecting? Or did I become, one more time, the instrument of a policy that someone else designed, aimed at someone who was doing exactly what I did before the badge, simply trying to find a way out? There is no universal answer. There never will be. And that is not a flaw in the question. That is the nature of power. Real power, institutional, consequential, irreversible power, is never morally neutral. And anyone who has ever truly held it knows that the weight is not in the weapon. The weight is in the uncertainty, the inability to close the ledger completely. The knowledge that some of what you did was unambiguously right, some of it was irreversibly wrong, and some of it will live in the gray space between those two things for the rest of your life. The hunger that brought you here, that raw, legitimate, human hunger for something better, that was never the problem. That hunger was the engine. The question is always what you do with the engine once you have the power it was trying to reach. Carry it carefully, because the people on the other side of your authority, the dangerous ones and the innocent ones, and the vast majority who are neither one thing nor the other, they are all carrying their own version of the same hunger that once lived in you. In the comments right now, I want you to write one sentence, not a paragraph, not an explanation. One sentence that describes the person you are committing to become. Someone capable of holding both ambition and conscience at the same time. Someone who pursues power without surrendering integrity. Someone who can look at a system that is simultaneously necessary and flawed and choose to engage with it with clarity rather than convenient certainty. Write it publicly, with your name on it, even if your name is just a username. Because the public declaration is not theater, it is architecture. When you commit to something in a social space, you engage neural pathways that private thought almost never activates. You create accountability. You build a mirror that reflects back the person the statement demands. And the self that looks into that mirror will slowly, over time, begin to organize itself around what was written. This is how real transformation begins, not in the silence of good intentions, in the public structure of declared commitments. If this video gave you something worth keeping, a perspective, a question, a confrontation with something you had been quietly avoiding, press the like button. Not as courtesy, as a signal to yourself that you are the kind of person who recognizes real value when it appears, and who acts on that recognition instead of scrolling past it. Subscribe to this channel, because what we are building here is not entertainment. It is a long, honest conversation about power, about value, about the kind of life that is actually worth the cost of building it. The badge is real, the paycheck is real, the transformation is real, and the weight is the most real thing of all. Carry it well.